Hi guys, I'm Ivory and today I'm going to be doing a side-by-side comparison of the Sol Face and Body Bronzing Balm against the new Elf Putty Bronzer. I've talked about the Sol Body Bronzer a couple times on my channel and I did include this in my current favorites video, so I already know how this one blends and wears, but this one I have not tried yet. I have, however, tried their Putty Blush as well as their Putty Primer, both of which I love. So I'm going to be comparing these two and then I'm going to do a little wear test, probably not the full 10 hours like I do for a foundation, but it'll still be a pretty good chunk of time. And for anyone that's new, I have oily skin, so I kind of just want to see which bronzer works better for oily skin. So before we apply this, I do want to say that the Sol Bronzing Balm is $15 and it contains 1.1 ounces, whereas the Elf Putty Bronzer contains 0.35 ounces and it retails for $6. So obviously this is more expensive, but you get more product. And I feel like proportion wise, it makes sense because 0.35 times 3, that's 1.05. And if you times this by 3, it would be 18. So if you measure it that way, you get more bang for your buck with the Sol bronzer. It's not by much. Sorry, I'm like doing this mentally. The price difference per ounce or per gram is not that much, but if you are a penny pincher, there you go. I did already moisturize. I used the Biosense Squalene and Zinc Sheer Mineral Sunscreen. This has SPF 30. They did send this to me literally the day that I posted asking you guys to help me find a new sunscreen. I got an email from them telling me that they were sending me this. So I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. They are non-toxic, paraben-free, phthalate-free, mineral oil-free, and fragrance-free. They're also cruelty-free and vegan. By using our sugarcane-derived squalene, you're helping us save 2 million sharks every year from unethical liver harvesting. And I am liking this one so much better than the ordinary one. This one doesn't have the white cast and it's thinner too. It's more liquidy, so it sinks into the skin better. So far, so good. And then I'm gonna go in with foundation. By the way, if you don't care about any of this skin prep, I do add timestamps in my description box, so you can just skip to wherever part you need to. I'm gonna use the Wet n Wild Tinted Hydrator. I have not used this one in a minute. The thing is, I'm constantly reviewing products. So even when I really like something and I wanna use it again, it's like, I'm on to the next already. I gotta review something else that people are requesting. But I love this foundation. It wears really well on oily skin. And when I do product reviews like this, I make sure that all the products that I use are things that I know and love and I trust, because if I do a full face of new stuff and then the product doesn't work out, how am I supposed to know whether or not it's because I use a new primer or a new foundation, whatever? So I make it easy on myself and for you by eliminating the factor of introducing new products. That way, if the bronzer in this case doesn't work, we know it's the bronzer's fault because everything else works just fine on me. And then I'm gonna add concealer. I use two. So in the center of my face, I'm gonna use the Flower Beauty one. And then on the outside of my eye, I use the ColourPop one because it's a different shade. It's a little darker. And then I'm gonna blend this ever so carefully as to not ruin my eye makeup. All right, and then before, oh my God, every single time after I add my foundation, my nostrils are always super itchy. So I'm gonna apply the bronzers now before I set my face. So with the Sol bronzer, by the way, the shade that I'm using is medium dark. I will take either this brush or this brush. This one is the Smith 130 and then this one is the KVD, it just says 5. But I will just take a couple swipes and I will start off on my forehead. And then I apply this usually a little higher than where my cheekbone is because when I blend it, it does fall a little bit. And you can see, even though the color looks crazy dark in the pan, when you blend it out, it's not too bad. And I'm not done. I'm not gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna take a clean sponge and then I just blend. And then obviously on the other side, I'm gonna use the Elf Putty Bronzer. This is in the shade Tan Lines. Okay, it has no scent to it, not that that matters. But if you get the Sol one, this smells like a tropical vacation coconut paradise. So I'm just gonna go into that one, a couple swipes, get that really loaded up on my brush and just, oh no, where is it? What the fuck? Maybe I just need more. Guys, what the fuck do I do? Oh, okay, I see it here. It's the faintest thing, but I do see it. This definitely looks like it's dark enough for me. Okay, yeah, I definitely see it. So maybe I just have to build it up. Okay, now I'm starting to see it. That scared me for a second. And then I'm gonna take a different microfiber sponge to blend this, just so that there's no cross-contamination. This is the same sponge that I used to do my foundation, but I just went upstairs to wash it, so it's clean. All right, so color-wise, you can tell that the Sol side is definitely more what I would consider bronzing. There's definitely more warmth to the face because of this undertone, whereas this one is more of a like a contour sculpting situation. Color-wise, I prefer the Sol one. I picked bronzers this color because it does both. It does a little bit of sculpting and warming up of the face, whereas this one, a lot of the times when you pick a shade like this, people will go in with an additional bronzer that is this shade. So then they end up needing two products, one to contour, which I feel like this color is a contour color, and then another product to bronze, whereas this one is kind of a 2-in-1 for me. So preference-wise, I do prefer the Sol one. I just wanted to pop back in to say that I am not faulting Elf for the bronzer shade that I picked. That's obviously a me issue because I'm the one that picked it. I'm looking at their website right now and I can see that they do have warmer bronzers, ones that would be more up my alley. I don't know what I was thinking when I bought it. Maybe there were limited shades, like some were out of stock. I don't know what happened there, but I can see that Golden Days, Bronze Belle, those shades do look warmer, and going back, I probably should have picked those. So if you are interested in these, if you can, try to buy it at Ulta, because if it doesn't work out, at least you can return it. Whereas if you buy it on elfcosmetics.com, you will not be able to return or exchange it, because take it from me, I already tried and they said no. So try to go to Ulta so that you can see it in person. But if you don't have an Ulta or you just can't see it in person, in my opinion, I would go with Golden Days or Bronze Belle. Please learn from my mistakes. But formula wise, I think I prefer the Elf one. It does dry down to a semi-matte powder finish, which I prefer. Whereas the Sol side, it still has a little bit of that tackiness, that balm feeling. The main reason why I prefer a powder finish is just because my hair, I don't want it, you know, sticking to my face. You can see this one, there's no sticking, whereas this side, yeah, it's sticking a little bit. So color wise, I prefer the Sol one. Formula wise, right now, I prefer the Elf one. And from what I can see, neither bronzer has lifted or disturbed the foundation underneath, which is good. I hate when I add cream products on top of my foundation and it lifts it off and makes it patchy, but that doesn't look like that's happening here. So that's a good start. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward doing the rest of my makeup. All the products I'm using will be listed in my description box below. All right, so I went ahead and did the rest of my makeup. These lashes, man, they are really lashy. If I look up, my eyelids are tickled by the lashes. But from what I can see, the bronzer worked well with all my other products. I also wanted to say I only lightly set my bronzer. I didn't set it down as heavily as I would do, say, my under eyes. Lately, with a lot of my cream products, I try not to set them if I don't have to. And a lot of the times I find that it wears just as well than if I had set it. But I just wanted to let you know that it is lightly set. But that is it for now. So I'll come back in a couple hours to show you how it's wearing. All right, so this is the 6-hour mark. I think I'm gonna wear this for only 8 hours. On both sides, I do feel like the bronzer has faded, which isn't a huge deal just because bronzer and like blush do tend to fade over time on my face. You can see on the Sol side, the foundation hasn't broken up and all, and the bronzer still, it looks exactly the same except it's faded. But in terms of it losing its coverage or clinging weird, I don't think that's happening. And pretty much the same thing on the Elf side. On the Elf side, it's gonna be even harder to see just because the color, it was hard to see even before when I initially applied it. So now that it's faded, it's even harder to see, I feel like. So if you use me as a shade reference, you might want to go up a level just to get a little bit more contrast with your bronzer, because I feel like this one is slightly too light for me, but I do still sort of see it. And from what I can tell, it's not breaking up my foundation on this side either. So from what I can see, I feel like both sides are wearing pretty much the same. I also want to say that sticky feeling that I was originally having on the Sol side, that does go away. So it doesn't feel sticky anymore. It's not completely a powder feel. I'm just saying this side doesn't feel tacky. It just feels like skin. So if you're worried about having a sticky face all day, that is not the case with the Sol bronzer. But this is what each of the bronzers are looking like in natural lighting. All right, so it is a little over the 8.5-hour mark actually. I know this review is about the bronzers, but I just have to say that this foundation, I know I've done a wear test already on it and I love this, but I haven't worn this in a while and I just forgot how well it wears. Like, I am loving my face today. With that being said, I don't feel like the bronzer has faded any more than it did at the, what was it, the 6-hour mark? I do still see it, and I added very minimal blush today just because I wanted the focus to be on bronzer. As far as how it's wearing, do you see on this Elf side, it's happening right here, but it's patchy. I can see some areas where it's the foundation, some areas that's my skin, and some areas that's the bronzer. So it's a little all over the place right here. Thankfully, the color of this isn't too dark, which is why you don't really see it. But had this been a darker color, this wouldn't have looked as nice. So I do notice a slight patchy issue in this region. And then for the rest of the cheek, it looks pretty good. And over here on the Sol side, I'm not really seeing that issue. Everything looks more or less the same than when I initially applied it. There might be just a little bit of patchiness happening, but even so, the damage is pretty minimal. So based on how the bronzers wore on me, I think that the Sol Soul Bronzer actually wears better on oily skin. Of course, that is just my experience, so take that as you will. That being said, I don't mind the Elf bronzer. This breaking up area isn't too bad. And now that I think about it, the Elf Putty Blush kind of does a similar thing on me. It starts to break down around the 6-7 hour mark. So if you like the Putty Blush, I have a feeling you're gonna like the Putty Bronzer as well because they behave pretty much exactly the same. So let's just break this down. Price-wise, obviously, this one is cheaper, but you do get more bang for your buck with the Soul Body Bronzer. It's not by much, granted, but if you count per ounce or per gram, you do get a little bit more bang for your buck with the Soul Bronzer. And of course, this is just a personal preference thing, but I do prefer the Soul Bronzer color versus the Elf color too. For me personally, I like bronzers that are on the warmer side, whereas this one is just a little bit too cool. So if you are interested in this product, I think this is just a little bit too light. I would go one up this. In terms of how they dry down on my skin, I do prefer the Elf bronzer. I just prefer that powder dry down feel. And like I said, in terms of longevity, I do feel like the Soul one is a little bit better on me, but this one isn't really bad. Like I said, like 2 minutes ago, this behaves just like the Elf blush, and I love the Elf blushes. Even if it's a little bit patchy, it's not a big deal to me, especially for the price. So I feel like there's pros and cons of both of these. Mostly, I wish I had this color, but I wish it dried down like this one. If the Soul Bronzing Balm dried down like the Elf one, I think that would be my perfect combo. If I had to pick a winner, it's this one. The most important thing out of all of this to me is how it wears on oily skin. I just feel like this one wears a little bit better. That being said, I really don't think that this is a bad product. I think it's decent, and if I didn't have this already, I probably would like this. So if you had to pick one, I'm going with the Soul Bronzing Balm. But if you're interested in the Elf Putty Bronzer, I say go for it. I don't feel like this bronzer wore bad enough that I'm like, oh, don't even bother. Don't waste your money on this at all. I still think it's worth trying because it really wasn't that bad. If I had to rate it, I would say 7.5 out of 10. Whereas this one, I would say it's a 8.3 out of 10. I definitely don't have a spreadsheet as to like how I tally up my points for a product. It's just what I feel in my heart. But that is it for this review. I hope that this review was helpful, insightful, or at least entertaining. Oh my God, my breath smells so bad. I ate too much garlic. If it was, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below what other types of videos you'd like to see from me. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I would love to see you come back. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one.